Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing something um, to help you guys learn Python if you guys are just starting out. We're going to be making Snake. It's a simple game using Python, and hopefully by going through this with me and you're trying on your own as well, you learn how to actually use all the classes and for loops and if statements in Python by doing something. This all stemmed while I was doing some volunteering, teaching some kids Python. I thought it'd be more interesting to learn by actually doing something. So this is just that exact thing. So let's get to it. The way we're going to actually make the game is we have this very rudimentary display code. And essentially, it's just a grid, and you just set the color of each coordinate. And all that's going to come together to create this. It's snake. As you can see, there's a snake that moves around, has some length. Every time you eat this apple, it gets longer. And in this case, we're wrapping it around um, if you get to the walls. And the goal is to eat as many apples as possible without dying. Now, the way you die is you crash into yourself. So if I go here, and let me just crash into myself, then I crash into myself and I die. So that's basically what we're gonna do here. Okay, so to create the actual grid, you create a display of it's always a square, but it's of size 5, so 5 by 5 is this here. And you can do different things. You can set some place, some coordinate with any of these four colors over here. And you can also do a reset. And remember, when we're doing it just here, you have to sleep to actually see the changes because, otherwise it's just going to render everything and then just stop and like just end the program immediately after. So then, you're not going to actually see any changes. So here, and remember for the coordinates, it starts at 0. So the very upper left corner is a 0. So if I run this here, then you can just see it's blue for a couple seconds and then it resets to become to black. Okay, and then it ends the program. So let's make snake. All right. So what do we need to have? We need to have some snake that is moving around with our key presses. So let's start off by just getting a snake, which is just one cube size, and you can move with your guy. Okay, so let's start by making a class. A class is just a blueprint for anything you want to have on your um anything you want to have. You can basically just make a blueprint. So as an example, for a car as an example, you a function would be the blueprint, right? So you'd say, okay, how many doors does the car have? There's going to be variables within the function. And you could have different function. You could have, color, size, and then you could have different functions like drive or service or whatever. And then you can use this class to make multiple versions of everything. Okay. So let's do this here. We're going to make class for entity, which can be the overarching class for anything we want to have here, just so that everything's organized. And this is how code is actually written, right? So we're going to have these coordinates, which are going to be x and y, and we're just going to store them x and y, right? Because it's for the grid, and we're going to have a color, okay? Because, everything has to have a color if we want to display it. And another thing, I want this class itself for each person to actually handle the rendering so that everything's cleaner within our main function. So I'm going to pass it to display so that we can do all this setting, resetting actually within the class. Okay, so here's the init. It basically is run whenever you make an instance of this class, and we're just going to initialize everything here. So self dot, meaning just self, right? So the variable x within this class, and then right, y is just our input. So we have to use the self whenever we're referring to anything. And then it's going to be self.display equals the display. Okay. So I'm going to make this for any entity, and that's all that we'll have right for now. Okay. All right. So now let's create a snake, and it's going to extend entity, meaning that it's called inheritance, right? So it inherits all of the properties from entity, right? So this is again, we need to instantiate all of these, or we need to initialize all of these, right? So you call super because this is our parent class, and we're calling super. So we're setting all these, but from the methods of this superclass, right? And in other cases, maybe you have some functions that are in common, but in this case, basically everything's different, right? Like depending on what you want the rendering to be different. So depending on how you want it, you might want to add more things to the entity class or take things out and instead keep it in each. But in this case, we're just going to do that, right? Okay. So what does a snake have now? We have the position and the color. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a render function, and all this does is it does this dot set self dot x self dot y to self dot color. So we're just setting that, okay? So let's just try that out here. We have snake equals a snake. It's gonna start at the first bit, and let's say it's green, right? Snakes are green, and we pass display. And we do snake dot render, and then time dot okay. See? Okay, it's wrong. Oh, right. And remember, whenever you have a function, you always have to have self in it for the thing, right? So, right. Again, you have to have self, right? Here, got it. Okay. So as you can see, same thing. We are just now everything relating to the snake is just put in this function, and now it's more compartmentalized and it's easier to read, right? Okay. So now let's get to moving it around. Okay. So the way this is going to work, right, is constantly, all the time, we are going until, we lose, you lose, right? So let's have this lose. It starts as false, right? Because you don't lose. While, the game is still losing, then we are going to continue checking for keystrokes and doing everything we need to do. Right? So while we're not losing, we're gonna do whatever. So, right? So we're gonna use this stuff here to grab the key press. Oh, sorry, what's that? To grab the key presses. And basically what this does is this ch thing, getch, it just grabs the character that you put, and then here you input, whatever character is. So let's say, um, I want to just let's render it differently. Okay, so if it's W, what do we want to do? We're going to use Wallace, right? So if it's W, we want to move the snake up one. So snake dot x is I'm gonna or sorry, MySQL one. MySQL is the same as doing this here. Okay, so it's just subtracting it because, right, that's what it would be like going up in the grid. And then if it's S, you're gonna plus, and this is just following laws. And what we need to do every single time is now we have to render the snake. Okay? So we're gonna now render the snake. Okay? And we're gonna do a time.sleep of just a short amount of time, right? Just because you need to do that, otherwise the program keeps on going too fast and it just dies, right? So let's see what's happening. WW, it just does this. Okay. So now, as I was saying earlier, the goal is to have just one block that moves around. But here, clearly, it's not a one block moving around. It's basically just like a paintbrush. And that's because we just continually just render the snake, but whatever the snake was before is still there. So this is where the reset comes in handy. Every single time we want to reset, right? So we'd reset here, and now we have a block that moves around. Okay, so I think we made some good progress. Now we basically have a snake that can move around. So let's do one more thing. As we can see from before, even if I don't touch it, the snake keeps on moving, right? That's just how snake works. So how are we going to figure that out in our snake game? Well, the whole thing is that we basically have to keep a counter of the direction in which the snake is currently going, right? So I don't know, the direction in which the snake is going, right? And then with that, no matter what, even if you don't press a key, it'll still go in that direction. So we're going to use this as direction, and we're going to set the direction with by initializing it. And now the render has another thing. We have the direction, right? So the direction's actually going to be what tells it to change the direction, right? Here, y- you're directly controlling, okay, like, only if I press it, it'll move. But in this case, it's just if the whichever direction D is pointing to, that I will use as which way I'm going, even if I don't press it. So basically, I'm going to do the same thing, right? So if D is N, or if D is S, you go down, or if D is equal to east, right? I'm just going to do it that way, or if D is equal to west, right? And now, or I think this would be east, this would be west, actually. Anyway, so now instead here, the only difference or is instead of telling it where to go, all we're doing this time is just telling it to change the direction, right? So north, south, and then east and west, right? So now, if we look at it, oh, sorry, that's the sample snake. Oh, right. Well, we have to set the initial direction. Let's just do south. And oh, I have gotten to do self, right? Remember, you have to do self for everything. And oh, yeah, I forgot that. I, this is the dangers of copy pasting, guys, right? It's not snake.y, it's self.y. So that should work. And as you can see, the coordinates are outside of the grid size. So let's take care of that. If any of these get, okay, let's see what's going on here. So basically, it keeps on going down, right? And I can change the direction, but whenever it gets to the end, it throws an error, right? Because I'm trying to render it outside of the grid. So how do we fix this? Basically, we just have to check if anything's outside of the place when we're rendering it, and we have to loop that back around. So basically, just check if self.x is less than 0, and self.x is equal to, oh, right. One thing we need for this is a, we need to save the size here, right? Because, um, how else are we going to tell if it gets outside, right? Like you need the size for that. So we are going to have to pass another variable into here to check the size, right? So then we go size minus 1, because remember, it starts from 0, right? It's 0, 0 at the top left. So if you wrap around, it's going to be self minus 1. And then you just do the same checking for the rest of it. Right, and then now it should work. Oh, all right. And now we have to pass what the size is. So the size is 5 here, right? And then now if you see, if I tell it to go this way, it'll wrap around. Okay, so what did we do today? Today we were able to make the snake, which is a block, and all of the movement is figured out. So now we just have to make the snake have a length that changes and add the apple. And today we used variables, we used classes, we used inheritance, and we used while loops, and we used variables, all of that together to create this. And I hope it was helpful, I hope it was useful, and I hope it made sense. And I would fully encourage you to try along and to try to implement all this yourself before looking at the video and saying, oh, this is how I can use this concept. So if this was useful to you, and you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.